everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and on today's Bookmas video, we're getting a little bit salty as I bring you my worst and most disappointing reads of 2024. As you know, in the past I used to do this as a separate video, but I kind of don't like having two negative videos, so we're just going to do it all in one, get it all over and done with. Also, as you may be aware, the lighting isn't what it's just, you know, you're going to hear the air conditioner. The lighting is on above my head instead of, like, you know, the natural lighting, because it's the evening time now, it's almost dark. And yeah, we're just gonna deal. I have a list of books that I found disappointing and books that I outright disliked. I'm gonna start with the disappointing. Let's warm up with a bit of disappointment. And the first one of these is This Vicious Grace by Emily Teed. I bought this in 2022 at Yalk, and there was something about it that just, I kept holding it off, but earlier this year I decided to get into it and finally read it. And while I was really intrigued by the magic and how everything worked, especially like the Condessa's connection with her, like the person she's married to and those around her, as soon as the romantic element came in, everything just became about the pair of them lusting after each other. And I felt, considering this is a YA novel, it was so mature, like it was borderline open door. And I was like, I'm sorry, but this is where I feel publishing really needs to have a different bracket for YA and have it sort of, instead of being just YA, being younger teen or older teen. I would not feel comfortable with anyone under the age of sort of 16, 17 reading this. And yeah, like I said, as soon as the romantic element became a thing, it was like, plot? What plot? And I immediately lost all interest, and the ending just was so bland compared to the rest of the book. I just lost complete interest. So yeah, that was quite disappointing because of that. Next up we have The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I gave this, I think, 4 stars. However, I did find it really disappointing, especially at the end. I was very heavily questioning the motivation of the male love interest, and I think if things had gone a slightly different way, there is no way on earth that he would have come back. Yeah, that guy was shady as hell, and she put up with too much of his bullshit. But also, she was another one of those characters where I'm like, why is it like multiple people are falling for her when a plastic bag has more personality and does more, you know? It just, yeah, even though I really usually like single parent reads, just everything about her was about her child. And I was having this exact discussion with one of Ren's cousins yesterday, and we agreed that, like, there's nothing against people who their entire personality is their children, but at the same time, I just don't want to be reading that. And this character, very much, everything she did was about her child, and it just, yeah. It got old very quickly, and like I said, the male love interest, questionable at best. The next one is one that I have a physical copy right here of, and that is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This one was mostly disappointing because as much as it was creepy and gothic, it wasn't creepy and gothic enough. It just felt every time it started to ramp up that element, it then just suddenly and abruptly pulled back, either to go into like a tangent or go into a new chapter or something, and it just never quite hit that sweet spot. And right as I was starting to feel creeped out, it would like switch direction or switch perspective, and I'd be like, oh, and it would then throw me back out of the story. So it just didn't hit the way that I wanted it to. Even though I gave it 3 stars, it's not one that I would ever reread, and I'm not going to continue the series. So that was very disappointing on that front, especially knowing how much Ren loved it. And then the final one for this was a graphic novel, and that is Crumbs, which was a very cute romance, I'm not gonna lie, but I just felt that the actual, like, some of the plot stuff that was going on with the magic system and like the kind of council, that was so interesting, and nothing happened with it. We just got such a vague, everything about it was so vague and poorly explained, and I just felt like there was such a wasted storyline there. Even without, if you'd have just left the romance out, I would have not cared if it had just focused on all of that. There was like a whole other story there that was just kind of like, eh. And I was like, that was the most interesting part of the book. And you just left it all so open and unanswered, and yeah, I was so annoyed by that, and I just felt that the book was missing so much that it needed to make it amazing. So yeah, I just kind of got annoyed at why would you include something that you're then not gonna follow and not gonna explain. It just felt lazy and sloppy, and for that I only gave that 3 stars. That was just the disappointing books. These are now the active worst books that I really just either I think were badly written or I just hated. We're kicking it off with an author that I'm just going to very quickly talk about because I don't really want to spend too much time on him, and that is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. All I'm going to say is a plot that is nonsensical and directionless, and characters that were flat, lifeless and confusing, and nothing really made sense. And I know that that's a theme with his writing, but I feel like this one was worse than other things that I've seen or read before. And yeah, I just, for a middle grade especially, I'm like, I'm an adult and barely following this, how do you expect a child to? I just think it wasn't well written, and I don't understand how it got like awards and stuff. But then I'm like, well, look at the name and you know why. So yeah, we're moving on. The next is Killing Stalking. Honestly, what the fuck? I feel like it went a bit too far, but also didn't give us enough of the characters' motivations and backstory to really understand what was going on and things. And I don't know, I just feel like it went too far in certain ways that I can't talk about because spoilers. And I did not enjoy this. I didn't have fun. I didn't like the dialogue. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like the characters. Like, I did give it 4 stars for like the atmosphere and the way it was gripping. And that's the only reason it got a 4 stars. If I hadn't have given it like a 10 for atmosphere, it probably would have been more like a 3 or even a 2. But yeah, it just what? Who even let this get published? Speaking of who let this get published, we have Hopelessly Hooked, where in my surprises video I have discussed a Peter Pan retelling that was actually good. This was not. It's supposedly a Peter Pan retelling. It was so awful. If you hadn't have been told that it was Captain Hook, you wouldn't have had a clue who it was. The world building was non-existent. Everything was just kind of thrown out there, and you were supposed to kind of try and piece it all together yourself. Only good luck with that because nothing was explained. The characters were just kind of, you'd get someone was introduced and then in the next sentence they were gone again. It's like, well, why was that character even there? It was only 99 pages, and yet I felt that 98 of those 99 pages were just useless things that either needed developing, needed explaining, or needed removing. It was awful. It's the worst book that I think it is my worst book of the year. I said in another video, it was a masterclass in how not to write a book. It felt like the plot started in the middle of the book and we were just trying to figure everything out as we went. It was awful. I just did not enjoy it at all. On the topic of world building, we have the Light Crest Contract by Luna Lawson. This was another one where I felt a lot of pages were wasted on exposition that was unnecessary, such as all of the descriptions about Christmas trees and the whole thing being set at Christmas, and yet Christmas actually had nothing to do with the storyline. I hate books and stories and films that do that. If you're setting your book at Christmas time and yet Christmas isn't a part of the main plot or story, don't set your book at Christmas time. It was literally like, what is the point? And at the end it was like, oh yeah, happy Christmas. Like, no, it felt cheap and tacky. It also was a book that was an Omegaverse book and made me realize I really, really despise Omegaverse settings and the way that just because you're an Omega, you're treated like absolute garbage. And I'm not here for that. That's worse than bully romances. That is like just pure dismissal of someone purely because their blood isn't perfect. And I am not here for that kind of relationship. And the power dynamics in this was so messed up. And it really was like, it wasn't even a bully romance. It was a, you are now I own you, you are mine. And I was like, do not appreciate it. I'm sorry, but there is no way that character would, from how you described her, there is no way that she would have fallen so quickly for this alpha. She would have been like, get jacked, you know? So I did not appreciate it. I didn't like it. I'm not interested in reading anything else in that kind of universe. The next one was one that I did have high hopes for because it had a woman selling books and she was and there was like a bit of a poly romance thing going on where she was dating multiple guys, and I was like, this sounds so intriguing. And one of the guys is an author. This sounds cool. And that is Zora Books' Her Happily Ever After. Unfortunately, this book spent 80% of the book, and I'm not exaggerating, about 80% of this book was either descriptions of her outfits, descriptions of her hair, or descriptions of the food that she was either cooking, eating, or seeing. And it spent so much time around those things, and her basically, like, we'd get a few pages of her with the love interest, and then the next few pages would be her recounting everything that we just read to her family, like her best friend and her grandma. And it was just, again, it was like, why have we got so much of this and so little focus on this actual relationship that also was extremely predictable? And it was kind of like, I worked out the twist and the shock in like the first 2 chapters. So, you know, it just felt very lax, and it felt like it needed another round of heavy editing to develop that plot and reduce so many of these descriptions. And it was just really frustrating. Another one that I felt did a little bit too much on the description and also just felt a bit bland, but also the smut was just horrible, and that is Bet on It by Jodie Slaughter, I believe. I can't remember, it's here. Again, it was one, I thought that the smut was really bad and it was really inappropriate, like the things that they wanted to do and where they wanted to do them. The way he described certain things and relating it to food. Never gonna look at peaches again without going, ugh. And yeah, again, it was one that as soon as the romantic element came in, that was all they could think about or concentrate on, and I was not here for that. I didn't like how that plot developed and how, like I said, it just became all about the romance and nothing else, and it just felt not great. And then the final one on this list is another one that was a contender for worst book of the year, and that is Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I've mentioned multiple times why I didn't like this book. I hated the male love interest. Female interest, she was kind of bland, and I don't really get why all these men were fawning over her when all it was that she was just a bit pretty. And like, he was supposed to be like this dark, brooding, handsome billionaire that was like her dark protector, and instead he was like a petulant, whiny little baby, and I just hated the way he was around her. And it kind of gave me almost K-drama vibes. You know those guys, like the chaebol rich guy that acts like a baby. He gave those vibes so hard, where he was trying so hard to be like this big, strong, scary, I'll kill the person man, when in actual fact he was just a wet wipe. I could not stand him. Ugh. And the ending of that book left me like shaking with anger and wanting to smack the ever-loving crap out of her for being such a dumb bitch. I don't have any particular feeling or thought about that book at all, but I will not be continuing that, and I don't think I'll ever pick up one of her books again because I just was not impressed. I didn't like it, and yeah, if Hopelessly Hooked wasn't as bad as it was, this would have been my worst book of the year. So yeah, I've tried to be as quick as I can with this because A, all of my batteries are running out. 2 batteries have exhausted while filming this, and this one's about to because I used it yesterday. But also because, you know, I don't want to dwell on the negatives too much, and I do want to get back to my happy videos. So yeah, that is the book. Those are the books that I was either the most disappointed in or actively just did not like this year. Let me know in the comments, do you have any books that really let you down, or any books that you absolutely just wish you had not read and wasted your time on? I'm always intrigued to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe. Don't forget to check out my Patreon and Etsy that are always listed below, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.